Welcome back. We turn our attention now to developments from the Israel-Hamas war, and Iran's wants nothing to do with mediations by the UK and other Western countries to refrain from retaliation against Israel for the killing of Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh in Tehran last month. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer, during a phone conversation with Iran's new president Masoud Pezeshkian, to stand down its ongoing threats of a military attack. Iranian state media reports that the president says retaliation is a way to stop crime and that it's Iran's legal right. Israel is yet to confirm its involvement with Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh. It has, however, put its military on the highest alert level. The US has warned that it is preparing for a significant set of attacks by Iran or its proxies as soon as this week, and has built up its military presence in the Middle East to help defend Israel. Speaking of the United States, the White House has expressed its deep concern about an Israeli airstrike on a Gaza City school compound on Saturday that local civil defense officials say killed around 100 people. It follows the condemnation of the attack from several Arab states, Turkey, Britain, and the European Union's foreign policy chief. The school compound in Gaza City housed displaced Palestinian families. The Gaza Civil Defense Service, which has a credible record stating casualty numbers, said about 100 people were killed in the weekend strike. Israel said around 20 militants had been operating at the compound.
Regarding potential measures we may take. We are deeply concerned about this weekend's horrific incident on the Tabeen school in Gaza City that killed a number of people sheltering in place. And our hearts go out to the families of those who lost loved ones, and we are praying for a speedy recovery for those who have been injured. We have been clear, both to our partners in Israel, that every possible effort needs to be taken to minimize the impact of civilian casualties. But again, as we have seen in this instance, as our Israeli partners indicated, that there were a number of Hamas militants using civilian infrastructure, in this case a school, to hide amongst that. And so we condemn and deplore any attempt by terrorists to hide amongst civilians in or under protected facilities. That needs to stop. Sites such as schools may lose their protected status under international law when they're used by combatants, but that certainly does not take away from the moral and strategic imperative that our partners in Israel have to take every possible step to make sure that the loss of civilian life, impacts to civilians, is not mitigated. And that's something we'll continue to stress apparently. On this specific strike and incident, we continue to be in close coordination with our partners in the IDF and have continued to solicit more information around it, but I don't have any information beyond that.
Meanwhile, hundreds of pro-Palestinian demonstrators on Monday rallied in a show of solidarity with the people of Gaza, demanding the UK government suspend its supply of arms to Israel. The demonstrators chanted slogans while they waved Palestinian flags and held placards with various inscriptions.
Israel must cease subverting UK politics. Let's be clear. They provide money, bribery to create puppets. Tommy Robinson, alias Tommy Yaxley Moron, or Tommy Todd, is one of them. He's paid 10 grand a month. Nigel Farage of the fake Freedom Party, Reform, and servile Keir Starmer are all Israeli puppets.
I'm here today because it's been 10 months of massacre after massacre, 10 months of genocide, 10 months of a continued 76-year ethnic cleansing. And so we're here to tell the government and Keir Starmer, even this being a new government, they have to know and they have to realise that we have not forgotten the hand and the part that you've played in the Palestinian genocide, in what's going on in Gaza. Heartbreaking to watch. We have a role to come out and play here because what started as imperial imperialism and colonialism in the UK must end in the UK. The latest massacre that killed 100 people in a school in Gaza actually came as a result of the funding of the US. They also recognized that the bomb was a US weapon, and it destroyed every single body. There was no one recognizable body found in that school. They were all shattered. They had to end up putting them in bags, 70 kilos for an adult and 18 kilos for a child.
I want to bring in former Israeli government spokesperson Elion Levy, who joins us from Tel Aviv. Elion, thanks for joining us on the program.
Good afternoon.
So this much-awaited response by Iran to the assassination of Ismail Haniyeh is raising a lot of concerns from Western leaders. They feel this might be the trigger to an all-out war between Israel and Iran. Are these fears legitimate, or are they simply blowing things out of proportion?
And Western leaders have been clear: if Iran attacks Israel, it will be an act of aggression. And the West stands committed to Israel's defense against attacks by Iran and by its proxy armies surrounding Israel. Iran is threatening a large-scale attack on Israel. Iran is saying that its proxy army in Lebanon, Hezbollah, will target civilians. And it's important that the world stand against the Islamic Republic regime in Iran and make clear that Israel has a right to security and a right to defend itself. Now, whether or not Iran does attack Israel directly, this wouldn't be something new. Because since October 7th, since the horrific massacre by Hamas, Israel has been fighting for its life against the Iranian regime and its proxy armies on 7 fronts. There have been attacks coming from Gaza. Just today, we had an attempted rocket attack at Tel Aviv. Missiles coming from Hezbollah, Iran's proxy army in Lebanon, in the north, 7,000 rockets, 60,000 Israelis displaced from their homes. Attacks by the Houthi pirates in Yemen, who have been sending drones and missiles at Israel. Attacks from Syria, attacks from Iraq, attacks from the West Bank, and in April, attacks from Iran itself. And back then, the US, the UK, other countries came together to help Israel defend itself against Iran. And it is important now that the whole world, not just the UK, the US, France, Germany, and Italy, be absolutely clear: any Iranian attack will be an act of aggression, and the free world will stand with Israel as it defends itself.
And you've been in government before on the side of Israel. What's the nature of conversation that takes place within government offices and circles in the face of an impending threat such as this?
Israel is looking to assert deterrence against Iran, to make it clear that if Iran attacks us, there will be consequences. Because for now, Iran has been trying to hide behind its proxy armies. It's been funding Hamas in Gaza, which is attacking Israel, sending missiles to Hezbollah, which has been attacking Israel, sending drones to the Houthis, which have been attacking Israel. Iran has already declared a regional war against Israel on 7 fronts using its proxy armies, and it just wants to shield itself from the consequences. And so Israeli leaders will be thinking now, how do we contain Iran? How do we push it away? How do we stop this project of imperialism, of exporting terrorism and religious fundamentalism across the Middle East, working together with other partners in the region, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, that are also threatened by Iran's export of religious terrorism, and to make it clear that if Iran continues to attack Israel through its proxy armies, there will be consequences, because that's how you provide security. You don't provide security by turning the other cheek and saying, well, you better not do that next time. You provide security by making it clear to your enemies that they cannot attack you without consequences. Iran wants to destroy Israel. That is why it is attacking Israel through those proxy armies on multiple fronts.
And in the meantime, Israel continues its offensive in Gaza. You would think the attacks would have reduced considerably following Mr. Haniyeh's assassination, but they have not. Is this because the IDF has realized that it's fighting an ideology and not the representatives?
Well, we're fighting an ideology, but more importantly than that, we're fighting an ideology that controls territory and has an army. And Israel doesn't think that we can defeat Islamic extremism, no more than Nigeria thought that it could defeat Islamic extremism when it fought Boko Haram, but you can remove it from power. And Israel's goals in this war that Hamas declared with the October 7th massacre, when families were burned alive, when festival goers were gang raped, Israel declared that it would remove Hamas from power, bring back all the hostages. There are still 115 hostages in Gaza, and make sure that Gaza can never pose a threat to Israel ever again. And right now, Gaza is still a threat to the people of Israel. Just a few hours ago, we had an attempted missile attack on Tel Aviv. The rocket fell in the sea. But if they hadn't missed Tel Aviv, I would have had about a minute to run for shelter. And there are some things that are worth fighting for. One of those is being able to live free of fear that terrorists controlling neighboring territory can fire rockets at your cities whenever they want. The first thing Hamas did after the October 7th massacre was to promise to do it again and again until Israel is destroyed. And so Israel is fighting now to make sure that the Hamas army of terror cannot attack Israelis anymore, and very importantly, to force it to release the hostages it has been abusing in its terror dungeons for over 300 days.
Well, apparently there's a lot of, empathy for people in the Gaza Strip. We're back to the anti-Israeli protests going on across the world. Apparently the feeling that Israel is taking advantage of the people of Gaza, but Israel is no longer concerned about perception of the war, is it?
I don't think that's true. I think Israel understands that it's fighting for the free world, and it wants the free world on side as it brings Hamas to justice for October 7th and prevents it from perpetrating another October 7th. Let's remember, during the massacre, the nationals of over 40 countries were massacred, raped, abducted. This was a crime against humanity. But Israel ultimately understands this is not a popularity contest. And we're not fighting to be popular in the world. We are fighting for our lives. We are fighting because there is a jihadi terrorist organization a 1-hour drive away from Tel Aviv that burned children alive on October 7th and is threatening to do it again and again, and will do it unless we stop it. So Israel isn't, acting out of vengeance because of the October 7th attacks. It is acting to make sure that Hamas can never do it again, as it is threatening to do. That is what we care about, getting our people home safely to their homes so that they can sleep in their beds and not be worried that they will be taken as hostages into Gaza like they were on October 7th. And by the way, we're focusing on Gaza. But as I said, the Iranian regime has been attacking Israel using its proxy armies on 7 fronts. Right now, in the north of Israel, there are 60,000 Israelis who have been displaced for 10 months. They are refugees in their own country. They can't go home because Hezbollah, Iran's proxy army in Lebanon, has been shelling and bombing their homes. And we have a duty to get those citizens back to their homes. That's what we care about. Not whether people are going to like us in Paris or London, but whether our people can live free and safe. That's the first duty of any country. And that is what Israel cares about now.
And you would know that as you are talking about getting people in Israel to safety, refugees in their own homes in Israel, the same thing is happening to the people in the Gaza Strip. They're refugees in their own land.
You're right. It's deeply upsetting, the tragedy that Hamas brought on the people of Gaza by declaring this needless war on October 7th and then choosing to fight this war from inside populated areas. Hamas builds its military centers inside mosques, inside schools, inside hospitals. It's built a massive network of tunnels underneath the whole of the Gaza Strip. And that means that when it invaded Israel on October 7th and took 250 hostages, it lured Israel into an urban battle, a war that Israel didn't want, didn't start, didn't expect, but a war that we have to win, or else there will be a next time. And Israel has been urging Palestinian civilians to get out of harm's way for their own safety, so Hamas cannot use them as human shields and hide behind them. And I think that not only Hamas, but also UN agencies that have been resisting evacuations of civilians for their own safety have a lot of blood on their hands. And there is so much suffering that could have been avoided if they had worked together with Israel to evacuate civilians to safety immediately after October 7th, instead of insisting that they stay in Hamas strongholds where Hamas can continue to hide behind them. It's shameful, and I hope there is accountability at the highest levels of the United Nations.
Right, and if you say, Israel has, legitimately warned the people in the Gaza Strip to get out of harm's way, and on the other hand, you claim that Hamas, used a lot of facilities within the Gaza Strip, building tunnels under schools, under mosques, and on the hospitals, the previous claims have said. How can the people get out of harm's way, in that regard?
Israel, at the beginning of the war, set up a humanitarian zone and started bringing tents into Gaza and said, look, here is an area of Gaza where the terrorists aren't fighting because it's an open area. We want civilians to move there. We will make sure they have the humanitarian aid that they need. But instead of helping them evacuate to these areas, Hamas held people literally at gunpoint and stopped them from fleeing these urban areas so that it could hide behind them. It's a revolting use of civilians, not only as human shields, but as human sacrifices. Hamas is a jihadi death cult, like ISIS and like Boko Haram. It doesn't care how many civilians are hurt, how many civilians have been killed, and Israel is the only party trying to get them out of harm's way. Here's the tragedy. Every time civilians move in accordance with Israel's instructions to get out of harm's way, Hamas terrorists move along with them and continue embedding themselves among civilians. That makes it extremely hard to pinpoint terrorists in accordance with international law, but that is what Israel is trying to do. And we need the world to call out Hamas's evil tactics of deliberately fighting out of civilian buildings, in civilian clothes, hiding behind civilians, because civilians need to be protected from Hamas.
And is Israel looking forward to further collaboration with the US and the UK as the war progresses?
The US and the UK are two of Israel's biggest allies, and it's good news that yesterday they warned Iran that they support Israel's right to defense against not only Iranian aggression, but attacks by Iran's proxy armies around the region, which include Hamas, which include Hezbollah. The last time Iran attacked Israel directly was in mid-April. It fired over 300 missiles and drones at Israel overnight. And American and British planes came to Israel's defense because they understand that Israel is fighting for the free world and for all democracies, and that it's important that Israel withstand Iranian aggression. And I hope that if the Iranian regime chooses to attack Israel in another unprovoked act of aggression, our allies will stand with us because they understand that Israel has a right to exist within firm, secure, defensible borders, and for its citizens not to be terrorized by the Iranian regime, which wants to wipe Israel off the map, and whose leaders are very clear, as they race towards nuclear weapons, that that is their goal, the destruction of the state of Israel and the murder of all the people who live there.
Right, Elion, thanks again for your time today.
Thank you.